Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder, and welcome to my games I beat in 2019 video. Much like the last couple years, I like to essentially do mini reviews of all the games that I beat in the previous year. There were some great games released in 2019, but especially I would say 2019 was a year where I revisited a lot of games that I really loved that I hadn't played in a really long time. Last year I beat a total of 58 games, which was quite a lot of games, more than I beat the year before. But much like the previous videos, I'm going to be splitting this up into two parts. I won't spend much time on any of the games to keep this as brief as I can. So let's jump right to it then. So we'll start off the beginning of 2019 with the end of a series, and that is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is the conclusion to the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy, a fantastic trilogy by all means. I've been a huge fan of the Tomb Raider games since the original game, and I think some people were kind of hoping this would end up where the original game started, maybe with Lara with her two pistols, but that's not really what this series was about. And I think I actually enjoyed Shadow of the Tomb Raider a little bit more than Rise of the Tomb Raider. So if you like this series, I would definitely recommend Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The next up was the January game of the month for the Cartridge Club, and that is Ducktales for the NES. Now, of course, I am no stranger to Ducktales. I've played this game many times through the years, of course based on the hit cartoon series that I also watched as a kid. And it was a lot of fun revisiting this game, fun pogo gameplay, and a great soundtrack to back it up. And immediately finishing that up, I decided to jump in Ducktales Remastered. And this is a remake by Way Forward. And what's kind of interesting about the remake is this almost seemed like a practice game for them before they jumped into Shantae Half Genie Hero, both using kind of like a hand-drawn art style for the characters and the 3D backgrounds. And the remake stays true to the original game to the T. Levels are pretty much exactly the same. But what was really neat that they did with this is they added some story sections before and after the levels, and they integrated all the characters into the levels, having meaningful purpose. Where before you just go one direction through a level and that was it. Even though there was like a lot more of the level to explore, but there was really no reason to do that. Or with the remastered version, they actually use that as an opportunity to send you to do different tasks throughout the levels, which is actually a lot of fun. And I would really say this is the definitive DuckTales game experience. If you haven't played DuckTales Remastered, definitely check it out. Then next up is another game that I was revisiting in anticipation for an upcoming remake, so I jumped into Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation 1. Not only is this one of my favorite horror games, but this is my favorite Resident Evil game. And like I said, I was replaying this just to kind of refresh myself as the remake was coming out, and I just played through the Claire A route. And yeah, absolutely love this game. And then like I said, Resident Evil 2 Remake. This is done very similar in style to the GameCube Resident Evil remake of the original Resident Evil, and they absolutely nailed this. It's Resident Evil 2, everything's the same, but everything's different. They just kind of move things around, make it look better, change layouts. The basic principle is there. All the story beats are there, but everything is just done so well. The game controls like a dream, amped up the horror, kind of fleshed some things out. And yeah, Resident Evil 2 Remake is now my favorite Resident Evil game, definitive Resident Evil 2 experience, and it was one of my favorite games of 2019. I played through Claire, Leon Second, and the Tofu and Hunk Survivor missions. Then after that, jumped into Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Overdrive. I never heard of this game until I saw Limited Run was doing a physical release for it, and I thought it looked pretty cool. And essentially this is a beat 'em up with an interesting like RPG element to it, where you can play as different characters, and as you play through, you get experience, and you can unlock different skills and abilities and combos, which actually was a lot of fun. And I had the opportunity to play this along with a friend, which is always a lot of fun. So I would say if this looks interesting to you, definitely check it out. The next up is a game that I had been meaning to get to for a couple months, but I was just playing some other games, and that is Marvel Spider-Man. Now, I'm not big into superhero games. I love the Batman Arkham series, and that's probably my best comparison. This is probably the best Spider-Man game ever, and one of the best superhero games. Playing as Spider-Man, web-slinging through cities is fluid and intuitive. Combat was very reminiscent of that of the Batman Arkham games, and the story and characters were just fantastic. It's not often I go out of my way to platinum a game. Of course, this isn't a hard game to get all the achievements for, but I decided to put the extra effort and did that. And along with platinuming the campaign, I also played through the City That Never Sleeps DLC trilogy. So I would say if you have any interest in this game whatsoever, definitely check it out. I think it's a must-play PlayStation game. Then next up was an interesting VR experience, and that is Job Simulator. This is less a like story-based game, more kind of just, I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a tech demo, but it's a lot of just like almost mini games, I guess. And you play some different like occupational roles, and it's all silly, humorous stuff. And it's interesting that my favorite part in this entire game was actually when you're doing the mechanic role, there's a radio station that you can listen to that has this radio show that's playing that's voiced by Justin Roiland of Rick and Morty, and it goes on for like 10 minutes, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. Unfortunately, the physical version of this game is pretty expensive. Apparently it was a low print run sort of deal. I'd been monitoring some local GameStops in hopes that this would show up because they weren't selling it for the inflated price, and I got lucky and was able to get a copy. I imagine digitally this not too expensive, and it's also available on PC VR as well. The next up was another Cartridge Club Game of the Month, this time Catherine. I played it on the PlayStation 3. I actually had this game for a few years. I thought it looked pretty interesting, but I had no idea I would enjoy this game as much as I did. In fact, I loved this game. It's pretty interesting, kind of has two different sides to it. Half the game is this social sim where you spend time talking to characters, making some dialogue choices with the potential love interests, and the other half of the game is the puzzle platformer part. Both were a lot of fun, but I loved the social sim aspect of it. The story was scandalous. Essentially, you're playing this idiot who accidentally gets into an affair, and then you make choices deciding, if you're going to pursue that or try to patch things up and get back with your main love interest. And the first time I played for it, I went for the True Catherine with a K route, and once I finished that, I enjoyed the game so much that I decided to replay it again and went for the True Catherine with a C ending. And yeah, I would say if this game, again, if this looks interesting to you at all, definitely check it out. I love this game, and we might be talking about it again in the next video. Then next up is a couple games from the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle, which is a digital package of classic Capcom Beat 'em Up arcade games. Picked that up and jumped into Knights of the Round. And I don't think I ever beat this game before. It's a very highly regarded classic beat 'em up game. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Don't have a whole lot to say about it. Then the next game might have been my favorite of this bundle, and that is Armored Warriors. I'd never heard of this one before, but again, it's another beat 'em up game, but this time you play as robots. And what's really neat about this is there's actually this cool mechanic where you switch up parts on your robot to do different things for movement or weapons. And just that alone, I think, really kind of separates this from a lot of beat 'em ups of that time, where a lot of games were just, punch, kick, super move. So nice having that shake up. Then next up is another VR game, this time a PSVR exclusive, and that is Astro Bot. Now, I heard great things about this game, but I never thought a platformer in VR could be this good. Now, I haven't played a ton of VR games yet, but this is by far one of my favorites. Essentially, you're playing kind of like this floating robot that controls another smaller robot that does all the platforming and item collection, and this game is just a lot of fun. You can feel the effort put into it, and being in VR makes for a pretty interesting experience. Again, another game I enjoyed so much I kind of went all out with it. Essentially, as you play through the game, you rescue crew members, and I rescued all the crew members, and I also beat the 26 challenge missions that unlock. And I would say if you have PSVR, this is an absolute must-have. Then next game was one that I was highly anticipating. This is a game I was aware of for quite some time, and that is Rabby Reeby. Now, anytime I talk about this game, I always have to say, don't judge a book by its cover, because this game is so good. This is one of the best Metroidvanias I've played. Of course, it has kind of a cutesy character anime girl aesthetic, but trust me, the gameplay is solid, has a big, unique, varied world to explore, and the combat system is great. Kind of the focus here is a lot of boss battles with the various friends you can make, and all the battles are kind of like a bullet hell kind of style. Fortunately, Limited Run did a physical release for this game. When I first heard about this, it was available digitally on Steam and was one of the highest rated games on Steam, which I think says a lot about a game. And I recruited all 27 characters, completed the Irisu, Fairies, Noah, Arena, Is the Order a DLC, Sasini's Halloween, and Before the Next Adventure DLC. So yeah, if you get the chance, definitely check this game out. Of course, it's personal opinion, but I think this is one of the best Metroidvanias around. The next up is a game that I mentioned that I beat in 2018, but I am going to give it kind of another beat, and that is Beat Saber. And why I'm mentioning this again is I actually platinumed this game, which I think beating the campaign is one thing, and then getting a platinum achievement in this game is a whole nother beast. Essentially, that does involve beating the campaign completely and completing a bunch of challenges in the free play mode. And for those who have played Beat Saber, you'd imagine that this is a pretty challenging thing to do, but it is a blast. And yeah, Beat Saber, one of the best VR games available. Doesn't matter what you have, get Beat Saber. Then next up is another Cartridge Club Game of the Month, a game that I had always heard great things about, and that is What Remains of Edith Finch. Now I know some people will instantly dismiss a game as a walking simulator. I think the term walking simulator is almost a derogatory, completely dismisses the strength of the narrative of a lot of these games, and I've come to enjoy the term first-person experience, because I think that better explains what these are. And what an amazing game this is. Essentially, you're learning about this character's family and the events that transpired before, and how they're each presented is incredibly unique, engaging, and tragic at times. I would say if you've never played any kind of walking sim game, this is the one to play. Then next up is another game that I was revisiting for a Game of the Month podcast, this time for the newly formed Quick Save Club, which is a sister podcast to the Cartridge Club, and Quick Save Club covers PC games. And what better game to start out with than one of the best games ever made from one of the best game series ever made, and that is Diablo. And I was also fortunate enough to be a guest on that podcast, so I definitely recommend checking that out as well. But I hope everybody knows what Diablo is. It essentially created the isometric dungeon crawler genre, and very few games have done better. What was neat at this time was GOG actually did a Diablo enhanced version release, which means it fit better on modern PCs. And I think visually the game still looks fantastic. Gameplay is a little bit outdated. There's been a lot of quality of life improvements with these sorts of games, but it's still an absolutely solid game. And additionally, what's awesome is that you can still play this online, and I was able to play through the entire campaign with a friend. So yeah, if you haven't played the Diablo series, I don't know, maybe if the first one looks interesting, start with that. But yeah, I absolutely love Diablo, love the Diablo series, one of my favorite games. Then next up was another interesting VR experience, this time The American Dream. This is essentially a comedic on-rails shooter where you're playing through the life of an American from birth to death, participating in all those many pivotal moments in a person's lifetime. But of course, as you can tell, the satire and parody of this game has to do with guns and how everything completed is done with guns. It's all guns. And it was pretty funny. Definitely don't take it serious. I would say if you like on-rail shooters or kind of like light gun games, this is definitely a VR game worth checking out. Then next up is Telltale's The Walking Dead Michonne, and I picked this up as I needed to catch up with the Walking Dead series. I'd kind of fallen behind. Much like a lot of people, we kind of dropped off after season 2, which is unfortunate, and the final season was coming up soon, so I needed to catch up. As I quickly found out playing this, the quality of the Walking Dead games never diminished. I think the series remained amazing from start to finish, and Walking Dead Michonne is no exception. This is a side-off game that covers basically one character's story, and it's a pretty significant character that existed in the comic books and the TV show, even though the Telltale games Walking Dead is kind of its own thing. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you enjoyed any of the other Telltale games. Michonne is not one to skip. Then again, replaying another game along with the Cartridge Club was Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link. Now this is one of my favorite NES games. I actually prefer Zelda 2 over Zelda 1. This is kind of like our early Metroidvania, with RPG elements. It's a bit of a challenging game, but for those people who said there's some obscure elements, you've got really no excuse anymore with the existence of the internet. You can easily look up some of the more obscure story beats. But yeah, still love the game. Then again, jumping back into Telltale's The Walking Dead was A New Frontier, essentially Season 3. Again, another just amazing entry to the series. This time you're actually playing as another character, not Clementine, but Clementine is present and has her role throughout the game. Much like the rest of the series, I love this and would recommend. Then jumping back into our Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle is Battle Circuit. This was one of my favorite games from this collection. Mostly I just liked the presentation and the style of the characters and just the game in general. Mostly straightforward, but very enjoyable. Then we also played through King of Dragons. This one was fine. I don't have a lot to say about this. Another pretty straight up beat 'em up game. And then there's also Captain Commando, which I think this was probably one of the least interesting ones of these beat 'em up games. I mean, it does have a baby and a mech, which is awesome, but overall it's pretty straightforward, nothing too special about it. Then I followed that up playing another Game of the Month podcast, the Cartridge Club Portable, and I played Thor God of Thunder, and I was able to join on the podcast for that episode as well, so definitely check that out. This is an action platformer by Way Forward. I think the best elements of this game is its design, like the pixel art, just looks fantastic. There's a lot you can do with the combat, a lot of different cool combos and attacks you can do, but the game does get a little repetitive. But for the price, I would say this is definitely a game worth checking out. And then finally, I got to enjoy Telltale The Walking Dead, the final season. Now this is season 4 of Telltale's The Walking Dead, and what a finale this is. I really don't feel like the quality of the series has dipped at all. It remains strong from the beginning to the end, very powerful, very engaging, many harrowing choices made along the way, and Clementine has been cemented as one of my favorite protagonists of all time. If you haven't had the opportunity, there's no better time than the present to jump into the entire Telltale The Walking Dead series. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Then jumping into what I consider one of the most underrated games of 2019, and that is Days Gone. This is basically like an open world game, kind of in the style of like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, but this has a post-apocalyptic setting with zombie hordes. The only vehicles available are motorcycles, and you're essentially like a biker trying to survive and make sense of this world. The story and the characters were fine, but I think where the game really shines is the world itself, and especially the gameplay. There's so many different ways you can handle every situation, whether it's random bandits or zombie hordes. It really caters to everybody's individual playstyle. And like I said, I think the game deserves a lot more credit than what it got. It's a solid game. It might not be great, but it's solid. Then next up was an interesting VR experience called Blasters of the Universe. Now I've seen other games like this before, but I hadn't played any of them. And although I had fun with this game, I'm not exactly sure this is my genre. Basically, you play as a stationary person using guns. This one also has a shield you can use, and you shoot at objects, kind of like a light gun game. There's bosses, and there's some humor involved. Like, it was fun enough for me to complete, but not necessarily something that I'd want to see a sequel to. So we'll have to see what happens when I play some other games in this genre. But I'd say if it looks interesting, definitely check it out. Then finally, finishing off the last game of the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle is Warriors of Fate. Again, another pretty straightforward beat 'em up game. Don't have a ton to say about this one, but I will say the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle is a fantastic package. Do recommend that. And then I thought, what better game to save for the last game of this video, and that is Bubsy, Paws on Fire. Now I know everybody loves the Bubsy games, but joking aside, I think this one's worth checking out. A lot of people will instantly dismiss this just for being Bubsy, but what's interesting about this one in particular is this is actually made by the devs that made the Bit Trip Runner games, which are basically their own genre called runners, where you run from left to right, dodging obstacles and collecting collectibles. I'm not as familiar with the Bit Trip games since I didn't play them, but with this one thing that I think was really neat, along with the music as you dodge things and get the collectibles, is it actually goes with the music beats, which I think was a pretty interesting way to kind of keep you in the rhythm and engaged with the game. There's a couple different characters you can play as, and some bonus modes you can do, but I'd say I had some fun with this game. It's not a great game by any means. None of the Bubsy games are, but besides Bubsy 3D, I think most of them are decent games. And like I said, that will do it for the first half of the games I beat in 2019. I hope you stick around for part 2. And then of course, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these games I've played. Have you played them as well? Are there any notable games in the first half of 2019 that are excluded from this list? And let me know some of the games that you beat in the first half of 2019. So that's going to do it for this video. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time on the Game Grinder.